The Neolithic revolution describes the consequences of farming, meaning the development of livestock herding and agriculture. And as a result, the widespread development of permanent settlement.
It was a change from hunter-gatherers to food-producing societies in many parts of the world.
Mesopotamia was the earliest civilization to develop in the 4th millennium BC, arising between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Mesopotamia in Greek literally means the land between rivers.
They had very fertile land, making it easy for agricultural production. The first settlers found life not very difficult because there was like wildlife to hunt, fish in the rivers, and edible vegetation. They figured out how to use water from the river to grow crops in abundance.
Are you ready, Mr. Benchaka?
I was born ready. Script! No. People began stealing from each other, so walls were constructed around towns. Soon enough, the cities began to grow from these towns.
In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians were the first to develop economically and politically. As they first began, kings and nobles would state rules and people were expected to follow. If one were to disobey, they were to be punished accordingly.
These city-states all had the same laws, punishments, culture, language, and religion. And even though they fought amongst each other, people were still allowed to interact by travel or trade from city to city. Each had its own king, royal family, military, and assembly of people.
The Sumerian social class structure had the kings and the nobles in charge, and then the priests were underneath them. Then there was the upper, middle, and lower classes. Slaves weren't even considered to be part of the social structure.
Even though they were separated amongst classes, each had their own home. You could differentiate the classes by their sizes of their home. The rich,
gold all in my chain, gold all in my ring,
had wide homes, while the poor had small and compact houses. Although the sizes were different, they all had 3 stories.
As they developed culturally and intellectually, the Sumerians were the first to have an actual written language known as cuneiform. It was needed to write down their laws and everything else. With the development of cuneiform, the Epic of Gilgamesh was created. Cuneiform eventually allowed them to have schools, but only boys could attend. They learned how to read and write at these schools, run and taught by priests.
These Sumerians worked with gold, wood, lapis, all to make small statues, chairs, and jewelry. These Sumerians also created fine mosaics. All Sumerian workers were paid regardless of their job. They were usually paid in goods or food.
Everyone each had their own gods that they would worship. The gods were assumed to look after them, and people would worship their gods and communicate with them, but no god was considered better than the other.
When the Sumerian city-states began to weaken, the city-state of Babylon soon took over.
Babylonian life was similar to those of Sumerians. They had city-states ruled by kings and nobles with the help of the assembly of people. Social classes and structures remained the same. Just like the Sumerians, they were expected to obey and know the law code provided, which was Hammurabi's code. The laws were written down on stone tablets to allow people to be treated equally.
They also believed in their own gods, but unlike the Sumerians, they did believe that some gods were more powerful than others. Their gods were based on geographical and astronomical features, such as the air, sun, sky, or crops.
The Babylonians also worked with the same materials to develop the same arts and crafts as the Sumerians, and they were paid the same as Sumerian workers with goods or food.
Next to rule Mesopotamia was a powerful military state in the northern Meso, the Assyrians. Unlike the preceding rulers, the king, in order to rule, had to represent the most powerful god, Arthur.
Sure.
Are you sure? Military officers were in charge of the local governments. They had other advisors pulled from the nobles. The most important was the chief of staff, who regulated communication with the king.
Scribes are the only ones allowed to read or write. And culturally, unlike other groups, they didn't create jewelry or statues. Instead, they created paintings.
Archaeologists that studied Indus Valley civilization focused more on objects rather than their written records because we have yet to decipher their writing systems. We can only understand their economical, social, political, and religious aspects through these objects.
Artifacts such as intaglios were stamp seals of ancient Indus cities. They were discovered and compared to Mesopotamian cylinder seals. They studied the seals in order to determine the nature of the society. They symbolized power and authority through complex technology.
Scholars re-examined artifacts from early excavations in Pakistan and India. They began to understand the social, economic, culture, and political developments that set a foundation for the Indus civilization.
The civilization flourished around the Indus River basin and its tributaries, consisting of present-day Pakistan and northwest India. The region provides lots of diverse resources for raw materials.
Objects that define social status and power were documented at the site of Murgar. Craft technologies and Neolithic burials reflected on economic and religious patterns. They also began to domesticate plants and animals at the site of Murgar.
There's evidence for mud wall buildings. These simple buildings had 4 subdivisions and lots of burials. There were lots of burial offerings such as stone and bone tools, a wide range of ornaments, baskets, and animal offerings.
Unlike China, they didn't have pottery, so they weaved baskets and netted bags. Although they did have woven fabrics and leather.
Jewelry such as bangles, bracelets, and anklets were made from colorful beads. These same materials continued to be used even after the Neolithic Revolution. During this time period, Egypt was taking its first steps towards political unification. We also see the first Egyptian language written in hieroglyphics.
Very strong archaeological evidence of settlements in southern Israel functioning as colonies. And there were small city-states along the Nile.
Traditional economy was based off of agriculture, with others in society working with simple crafts. Agriculture was based on a community basis. In the west desert of Egypt, the earliest signs of wild cattle keeping emerged.
Wheat and barley were immensely popular in Egypt, but they did not grow in Sudan because they were a winter-growing cereal.
Sudan.
That's what I said.
People in the west became sedentary, with only an occasional movement of a limited number of people. Pastoralism was an addition to the hunter-gatherer mode of existence, so those remained mobile. Their mobility depended on the regional and local environment, resources such as water or wild crops, and the balance between herding or other people.
The religion in Egypt was more animistic. Spirits became gods in their own villages, and there was the Badari that had simple graves. The Amartians had graves with statues. Gurzian mastered the art of agriculture with new styles of pottery and arts.
Essentially, carvings and decorations of royal tombs were made for kings or important people as well.
China, like other areas during the Neolithic Revolution, had their settlements along rivers. In central and northern China, there was the Yellow River, and in southern and eastern China, there was the Yangtze River.
With the introduction of metallurgy, people focused on making tools instead of hunting and gathering.
Pottery was a very big thing as well. Over time, intricate designs and more patterns were found. People were getting more creative and advancing in their crafts. You can see social developments through pottery. Things were getting more complicated, like civilizations and people.
People got interested in weaving and making jade trinkets. I mean, people were changing. They started forming clans like little family communities.
People in the clan were the same kin or ancestors, and they were all under the head of the same clan. Essentially, everyone worked together and sustained their clan through labor. More or less, people had the same status or belongings.
Early on, they had lots of freedom. Whether you were a man or a woman, you could choose your spouse. There were both monogamous and polygamous marriages, meaning you could marry one person or plenty.
But later on in the Neolithic period, monogamous marriages were more accepted, so that was pretty standard. Also, people and cousins of the same clan couldn't marry.
It's interesting, really. The Neolithic Revolution pretty much helped jumpstart the ancient Chinese cultures. Society was developing.
Okay. And then hello, Tabby.
No.
Mesopotamia. Lots of jade. Lots of jade and stop. Lots of pottery and jade carvings.
Craft technologies and Neolithic burials began to reflect economic and religious patterns. Barley were immensely popular in Egypt.
No,
I know, she was right.
I know, but the way you were saying it was ugly.
Unlike the preceding rulers,
I didn't help you, buddy.
objects that define social status and power were documented at the site of Olbar.
Murgar! Murgar!
Okay,
Okay. You're live.
cleaning up.
Alright. Jesse, am I in the frame? I doubt it, but still check just in case.
No.
I know. Buzz. The Babylon.
Andrea, shut up.
Jewelry such as bangles, bracelets, and ankles.
Andrea, stop. Sometimes it says 20, now it says 19 seconds.
What's that triangle?
It means that something. Look, it says flash disabled for some reason.
What?
But you could see me.
Get out of the picture.
You speak Spanish.
Oh, being what thing?
It sounds like Spanish.
No.
It's a British accent, my darling.
It's like the Sumerians. Leave me alone!
Although the sizes were different, every house had 3 stories. 1, 2, 3.